Every person is entitled to live a life free of fear and domination, but many don't. About 1/2 of American women are victims of domestic violence and abuse at some time during their lives. The U.S. Surgeon General ranked abuse by husbands or partners as the leading cause of injuries to women aged 15 to 44, and it's not about love. The real issue is about power and control. Although there are women in relationships who abuse their partners, for grammatical purposes, this video will refer to the victim as her and the abuser as he, because statistics show that most batterers are male. There are many ways to obtain power and control in a relationship. We all know the most obvious way: physical abuse. It's violence, hitting, shoving, pinching, slapping, kicking, or choking, and it can escalate to shooting, stabbing, or murder. But a less well-known tactic for gaining and maintaining control is mental abuse, which includes verbal abuse like name-calling, constant criticism, or put-downs, ignoring, blaming, or manipulation through mind games. Mental abuse is a long-term condition of disregarding another's rights or feelings. It often leads to physical abuse.
You only think about yourself. You're selfish and dumb. What do you do all day? Sit around and watch TV? You're good for nothing.
Other controlling behavior involves gaining power through domination, isolation, threats, intimidation, economic abuse, using children, or sexual abuse. These are all tactics that abusers use to gain and maintain control over the victim. Domination involves one partner making all the decisions, keeping the other partner in line, or treating them like a servant.
You look like a slut. What are you doing? Going out and picking up men? Go change your clothes.
Isolation and extreme jealousy are an attempt by one partner to control the other partner's activities, time, and friends.
Where are you going?
The grocery store.
How long are you going to be gone?
Not long. I just have to get some bread and milk. Hi.
You've been gone 45 minutes just to get bread and milk. Are you having an affair?
Threats and intimidation, such as using looks, gestures, actions, yelling, or shouting to frighten a partner, are powerful tools of manipulation and abuse. Destroying property or threatening to hurt, kill, cut off financial support, or take the children away are also common intimidation tactics.
You're not leaving. Damn, you can't even get dinner on time. You're a lousy wife, a lousy mother. I'd leave you and take the kids with me.
Economic abuse can involve trying to keep a partner from getting or keeping a job.
You don't need a job.
Making her ask for money.
I need some money.
What for?
Pick up the cleaning.
I just gave you 50 bucks last week. What'd you do with it?
I bought groceries.
Berating her when she asks for money, giving her an allowance, or taking her money.
You spend too much money. You don't know how to handle money. You are such an airhead.
Using children is a tactic to make a partner feel guilty, afraid, or degraded. It also involves using the children to give messages or using visitation as a way to harass her.
Okay. Thanks.
Sexual abuse involves forcing a partner to have sex or perform sexual acts without mutual consent, or using her as a sex object.
No way.
You'll like it.
Way back in history, women were seen as property. As a result, some attitudes have developed that support male dominance over women, particularly in intimate relationships. For example, in some states, a man who hits his wife is guilty only of a misdemeanor, but if he hits a stranger, it's a felony. Some people accept family violence as no big deal and use the excuse, it's a family matter. Remember, assault is a crime no matter who the victim is. A number of myths have added to the acceptance of domestic violence, both by men and women, such as the myth that a woman, through her words, behavior, or personality, provokes or asks for her partner's abusive behavior. No way. Violence has little to do with the victim's behavior and everything to do with the abuser's early learning, the ability to cope with both internal and external stress, and his own attitudes about male-female roles. For example, one researcher found that 60% of batterers came from homes where they witnessed or were battered themselves. Violence is a learned behavior in response to stress. Blaming the victim is a way of justifying and rationalizing abusive behavior.
It was her fault. She knows I hate it when she's cute with other men.
Women who stay in abusive relationships are asking to be beaten and therefore must like it. Wrong. No one likes to be beaten or abused by a partner. Staying in the relationship has to do with emotional dependence, traditional values about marriage and family, economic dependence, fear, and other complex issues. Many women are trapped by the threat of harm to them or their children if they leave. Others stay because their abusive mate promises to change or do better. Alcohol use or abuse causes battering. Wrong. While there is a correlation between alcohol use and battering, alcohol does not cause men to behave violently towards women, but it can often trigger a fight. Alcohol does lower inhibitions and is a convenient excuse for abusive behavior. Abuse does not affect the children in the family. Usually they don't even know it's happening. Wrong again. It has a devastating effect on children, even at a young age. Studies of children in shelters show that they remember their mother being hurt and they feel afraid, angry, isolated, and unable to trust. Often they display acting out behavior, have problems in school, and are violent toward their mother, brothers, or sisters. Children from violent homes have low self-esteem and often display compulsive behavior or have trouble forming lasting, intimate relationships. Only low-income, minority women are abused. Not true. Abuse crosses all ages, income, racial, and educational barriers. In general, researchers say that women who are less educated, unemployed, young, and poor are more likely to be involved in abusive relationships. But some studies have shown that there is an even higher rate of abuse and battering in affluent neighborhoods where it's not reported. Common traits of battered women include low self-esteem, being raised in an abusive family, alcohol and drug addictions, passivity in relationships, dependency, isolation, and a high need for approval, attention, and affection. Pregnant women are also very vulnerable to abuse. The more of these traits a woman has, the more likely she is to be involved in an abusive relationship. According to one patrolman, domestic violence is a long-term problem that comes to a head and then the police are called. As law enforcement professionals, your job is to investigate domestic violence situations, identify abusive behavior, protect the victim from further harm, and make a referral if necessary. Your role is that of peacekeeper and public safety officer, but you're also seen as an authority figure, and your words and actions often can influence the victim to leave or get help.
Ma'am, I've seen the situation many times before, and it won't get any better unless you take some action. You don't have to go through this alone. There are many people there that can and will help you.
Domestic calls are a bitch. There's no telling what you're getting into, what you'll have to do, or how often you'll have to go back. Your goal is to resolve the situation. If crimes have been committed, or the woman or children are in danger, take action.
Mr. Smith, you're under arrest.
If you can't make an arrest, make a referral. Most states have laws that strongly recommend making an arrest in a domestic violence situation. It is mandatory in 15 states. Nationally, a legal trend is appearing where police have been sued for failure to protect. In these cases, women claimed that the officer took complaints about domestic violence less seriously than complaints about other kinds of assaults, and that this violated equal protection under the Constitution. Courts have awarded million-dollar verdicts against officers who were held liable for not preventing domestic violence. For example, an officer promised a woman that her boyfriend, who had just broken into her house and threatened her children, would be locked up overnight. But the boyfriend was released that evening, went to her house, and killed the children. The woman sued the officer for failure to protect, and she won. Most law enforcement academies recommend that if there is probable cause that a violation has been committed by a household member, officers need to make the decision to arrest. Don't ask the victim's preference in this decision. It's your decision, not hers. The purpose of the arrest is not to keep the abuser in jail, but rather to make him aware that his behavior will not be tolerated, and also to compel him to get help. Studies have shown that being arrested the first time and held in jail can serve as a deterrent, even if there is no further prosecution. Another issue that officers need to be aware of when making an arrest is the difference between mutual combat and self-defense. Often police will arrest both people because they see signs of injury to both. They leave it up to the judge to figure it out later. A more careful investigation can show who's the victim, and that person should not be arrested for defending themselves, which would add to their trauma and feeling of victimization. This is an important issue and calls for your best investigative skills and interview techniques. When you arrive at a domestic, the victim may be strung out emotionally. She may be yelling and hysterical. This is a tough situation, but you can diffuse it by using this simple technique, which has 3 steps. First, separate the couple and let her talk. This is emotional first aid. She needs to tell her story when she's a little calmer. Tell her that she's okay, she's doing fine. Keep reassuring her.
Tell me what happened
The
next.
second step is team building. Tell her, we're going to help you. We're here to protect you. This again reassures her and makes you both part of the same team instead of adversaries. The third step is to tell her what you are going to do, what action you are going to take to help or protect her. This shows her that there are solutions and that she will get help. Remember the 3 steps that start with the words she, we, and I. Every domestic call is different and needs to be handled in a flexible way. There are no techniques set in stone. Your ingenuity, problem-solving skills, and ability to communicate are very important. Here are some scenarios that may give you an idea how to handle some common situations.
We can't afford it. What do you think you're
I
doing?
needed something. I haven't bought it.
We just don't.
When they're both screaming, don't join in. Try to separate the couple to get them to calm down. Explain that you're there to help and that you can't help until they calm down. Once they start talking, you can get the information you need to know in order to make an arrest or referral.
Is there any type of physical violences besides?
Growing up with abuse makes it seem like a normal way of behavior. This guy thinks it's okay to hit his wife or girlfriend or children because that's what he saw at home. Just because he's making up and being nice doesn't mean everything is all right. He has committed a crime, and if appropriate, an arrest needs to be made. Don't fall into the trap that this is a family matter that they can settle. or believe that everything is okay now. Just because the abuse is over doesn't mean it's over for good. You'll be back again if you don't finish your job. Make referrals or an arrest if necessary.
I would suggest that you could go to a friend's or a shelter for the night.
I don't want to go.
You heard her. She doesn't want to go. So why don't you guys just get the hell out?
When you go on a domestic call, you become the intervening party. The couple may not like your suggestions, so you could become the bad guy. This is a tough situation, but stay with it. Keep saying you're there only to help. Offer options and make referrals. A woman who has been mentally abused for years may seem crazy. Her thinking and perception may often be distorted or not make sense. One researcher reports that victims of abuse are like prisoners of war, disoriented, suffering from sleep deprivation, interrupted eating patterns, and shock. They have lost the ability to think clearly or think for themselves. She may appear crazy, but she's not. She's emotionally distraught. There's a big difference between being off your rocker and being the victim of abuse. The batterer may play the good old boy role and try to make you his friend or buddy. He'll be very likable and try to convince you that his partner is paranoid or deserved it because she is promiscuous, an alcoholic, a bad mother, etc. Even though the batterer may play the good old boy role, remain neutral and don't get sucked in. Never agree with or condone his behavior.
Hey, it's no big deal. You understand.
Look, I don't understand. This is not how you deal with these problems. You need some help. This is an assault and it gets...
Hello, ma'am. Your neighbors gave us a call. They thought they might need some help. Can we come in?
The couple may deny there is a problem, so it's your job to probe for evidence. Get inside, if you can, to look for signs of violence, then separate them and ask what happened. She may be afraid to talk in front of him. Reassure them both that you're there to help, not make life difficult. Make referrals, explain about a protection order, give printed information, and encourage her to call in the future if she has a problem. The victim may have very little, if any, self-esteem or confidence. She's been beaten down for many years, emotionally or physically, until it's reduced her to a shell. As one social worker said, literally, some have had the life beaten out of them. You can just see it in their eyes. In this state of mind, they have a very hard time making any decisions. The decisions are up to you.
Look, we've been coming out here for years, and this never gets any better. Why are you still here?
She can't make the decision to leave. Commonly, victims have trouble making decisions because they have been controlled for so long. One victim actually asked her 6-year-old child if they should go to a safe house when the police suggested it, because she was incapable of making a decision. Years of battering lead to a feeling of worthlessness.
He convinced me that I was nothing, worthless, that I was incapable of making a good decision, that I couldn't make it on my own. I had no place to go. I had to stay.
Talk with her about options, offer her different choices, suggest that she needs to remove herself from the situation for a while, for a short period of time, so she can sort it out and get help. Sometimes this approach, which is seen only as a temporary decision to leave and talk with a counselor, can overcome her fear of a long-term decision. Why do women stay? There are lots of bad reasons.
I've never worked. I have no money of my own. How can I make it on my own with these kids?
He's really a nice guy when he isn't hitting me. He only gets like this when he's been drinking.
How can I tell my family and friends that he's been beating me for years and I didn't do anything about it?
I can't leave him. I love him. He'll change.
I didn't want my son to grow up without a father.
I felt like I had no energy. I couldn't do anything. Some days I couldn't stop crying.
But no one in our family has ever gotten a divorce.
I was afraid that if I left him, he would get so mad that he would kill me, or the kids. He has a horrible temper.
It may have taken her years to get up the courage to call the police and break the cycle of her partner's smothering control and abuse. Now she's afraid of what's going to happen next. If she tells the truth in front of her partner, he may become violent again after you leave. In this situation, you might want to separate the couple in different rooms or areas where they can talk freely.
I'm afraid after you leave, he'll get mad and hit me again.
How often does this happen?
It's your job to evaluate the seriousness of this situation. Question the partners about what just happened, and also determine if it's a pattern. Previous violent behavior is the best indicator of future abuse.
She's crazy, she drinks a lot. Hitting her's the only way to get through to her.
That's not the way to solve the problem, though.
The batterer may explain his behavior as signs of love and concern. Don't let this fool you. These are signs of domination and control, not love. The key here is equality. In a good relationship, each partner is seen as equal and treated that way. Common things batterers do are deny what they've done, minimize their attacks, and always blame the victim.
I'm just trying to make her a better wife. She just needs to be reminded of who's the boss.
I didn't hit her real hard.
I'd never do that to her.
The house was a mess. There was no food. I had to teach her a lesson.
If you hear any of these excuses, chances are he's a batterer. Statistics show that if an abuser hits his partner 2 times, it's likely to continue and usually will increase in frequency and severity. You need to share this information with the victim. Urge her to get help and deal with this problem now. Remark on her intelligence and bravery for calling you. Be supportive and encouraging. This may be something she hasn't seen in years. Refer her to a community agency for information or a shelter for protection, or if necessary, take her to a hospital for medical care. A common situation after a couple splits up is one partner continues to harass the other. He may follow her, telephone to harass her, write her letters, or threaten her. Stalking is a repeated pattern of harassment that goes on over time. It's psychological threat. The stalker is obsessed with the victim and can't let go. Although the relationship is over, he still pursues her. She becomes afraid and may call the police for help. When you talk to her, advise her that his actions may fit into the classification of stalking. She needs to talk to the county attorney about this and, if needed, get a stalking order to stop this harassment. Explain that this order lists what he can't do, and if he violates it, he will be arrested and go to jail. Traits that are often seen in men who abuse their partners are jealousy, controlling behavior, isolation, blaming her for his problems or feelings, hypersensitivity to everyday events, cruelty to children or animals, breaking or hitting objects, verbal abuse or shouting, rigid sex roles, sudden changes in mood, past battering, threat of violence, or physically restraining her. The more traits a man has, the more likely he is a batterer, and the potential for violence is greater.
You look like a slut.
Other risk factors include unemployment, drug or alcohol use, little education, income below poverty level, a background of family abuse, or violence toward children. This man is probably not happy with his life. He has no control over it. He needs to get that power and control somewhere, so he chooses to get it from the easiest, most vulnerable dependent sources, his partner or children. There are 3 parts to the battering cycle that are repeated over and over during the relationship. The first phase is where the tension is building and the woman tries desperately to keep the man calm. She'll do almost anything to keep him from being angry. The second phase is the explosion of anger and violence, which is followed by a third phase where the batterer is loving and says he's sorry and will change. He pays attention to her, listens to her, sends flowers, and makes her believe that everything will be all right. In this campaign to win her back, he may even enlist friends, family, or clergy to convince her to stay. He blames his work situation, drinking, etc., and promises to change. He makes excuses like, the children need a father, or he needs her help in order to get better. This shifts the responsibility to the victim. Now it's her fault if he's punished for his violent behavior. In reality, it's unlikely that he will ever get help or change as long as she stays with him. Abusers usually seek counseling only after she's left in an effort to get her back. The victim often believes that his good behavior is a sign that he will change. She also wants to see this behavior as his real self, the good guy. This is major denial, and one of the big reasons victims decide not to leave or press charges, because it's very difficult for her to do in this nice stage. Eventually, these repeated battering cycles wear the woman down until some are so physically and mentally exhausted that leaving is almost impossible. Even the memory of past abuse keeps her in fear and under control. Her self-esteem is gone, which adds to her shame and self-hatred for staying. She becomes a victim of terror and brainwashing, and often believes that she is incompetent and deserves the abuse. What's the turning point when women take action? Often it's when she can no longer hide the scars and bruises, or when her financial resources improve, or neighbors, friends, or doctors bring the problem to light. Deciding to leave depends on how safe it is to get up and leave. Often women decide to get help when the pain of staying in a relationship outweighs the emotional or financial benefits, or the children are in danger.
I remember thinking that I didn't care if I lived or died, and that thought shocked me into taking action. I wanted my children to have a live mother rather than a dead one.
When women do take action, it can range from calling a hotline, starting counseling, filing for divorce, or seeking a court protection order. We can go to 100 calls and make 100 arrests, but we can't do anything to break the cycle. We just pick up the pieces. But if she's taken the first step to call, then that's an indication that she's ready for help. Reminder, you called us. Now, are you ready to leave or get help to stop this abuse, or not? Sometimes the judicial system doesn't realize the extent of the problem of domestic violence and the necessity of court intervention. The courts need to send a clear message that domestic abuse is a criminal act and will not be tolerated. Protecting the victim should be the #1 goal. The only way abusers can be ordered to get counseling and hopefully change their behavior is through courtroom decisions. Your job is to provide equal protection under the law. You are sworn to uphold the law, and that includes making arrests and enforcing court protection orders. Each time you go on a domestic call, ask yourself, did I protect? Think about what you'd say to defend your actions if you were called into court. Imagine your report as an exhibit in a courtroom. That's a crummy perspective, but it's real nowadays. The goal of this video is to make law enforcement officers, attorneys, and judges aware of the complexity of the problem and to help them deal with it sensitively and fairly. Understanding the dynamics of abuse and violence and the battering cycle can help you to be a better investigator. As one patrolman said, it gives you a clue as to what's going on. It's a start.